Good evening to our audience. Welcome to the Drug Advisory Council of Australia's webinar. My name is Jan Kronberg and I'm the National President of the Drug Advisory Council. We're very pleased to have a very large number of people who have booked for this event, and I have to also say that I understand that some people have been generous enough to make some donations, which helps keep us ahead of things in our work. And the Drug Advisory Council is very focused on getting a message out to save the suffering of the younger generation, to have them understand fully the harms that illicit drugs have on their bodies and how damaging it can be. And so tonight we have a very, very special Australian father. Mr. Tony Wood from Sydney is joining us tonight. And in our promotional material, you would have seen the fact that Tony is the father of a beautiful young 15-year-old girl, Anna, who took one ecstasy tablet in 1995, and a few days later she died of the horrendous effects that drug had on her system. The suffering of the family and their grief is still apparent. Tony and his now late wife Angela and Anna's sister Alice have been through an ordeal as well as their grief in terms of what they set out to do the best in Anna's memory by reaching out and telling Anna's story, which is a profound story and a story that I'm hoping will resonate for all of you there. For younger people who might be listening to us tonight, there are lessons to be learned from people who make decisions in their adolescence. For parents who are not necessarily aware of some of the temptations that float across the bows of young people. For grandparents who might have more time to focus on these matters in a detailed sense and bring wise counsel to the family unit from what they will learn from Tony Wood's address to us tonight. Now, Tony has very generously sent a copy of the book that was written by an esteemed Australian author, Bronwyn Donaghy, and this is Anna's story. And his beautiful daughter, Anna, is featured on the cover. A girl with a magnificent face, a beautiful smile, a composure and a presence, extraordinarily beautiful at 15. And these are the memories for everybody in her family. There's another book that we'll refer to a little bit later on that Bronwyn Donaghy also wrote. And this is about youth suicide. And unfortunately, the statistics are compelling. And a lot of young people who are suiciding have a history of drug taking. So Tony is waiting very patiently for us. He will speak to us in a very fulsome way. And tonight you'll have the opportunity to put some questions to him as well. He's very generous with his time. He's a man who had a health setback not so long ago, and his resilience and determination will be present tonight with us. We are about to hear from a great Australian hero, the average Australian father who has suffered a lot but has got a really profound message we hope that will echo down for years to come. There are the lessons to be learned for us all. Hearing Anna's story. Tony Wood, if I could hand over to you tonight. Now, please share Anna's story with us.
Thanks, Jan. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. Look, back in October 1995, it's a long time ago now, our journey started in a way that was just heartbreaking. It was a Saturday, and our daughter Anna was 15 years old, and she asked if she'd go across the road to watch videos with her friends. And we said, look, I've been married twice. So my daughter, my first marriage, was coming along with her daughter, Chrissy, who was 5 years old, and we were having a dinner, and Anna was fine with that. So we sat down eventually and had dinner together, and at the end of that, Anna and Chrissy went into the lounge room, and they were playing Twister. I mean, the noise and laughter and that was coming in, the joy from that room was just incredible. Anyway, Glenda was taking Chrissy home, and it was about 8:30, and we thought, oh, we're a bit mean not letting Anna go across the road. So we said, look, if you want to go, off you go. That'll be, just see you in the morning. So she rang her friends, and they came over, and the last words I heard from Anna is she put her arms around my head, actually, and said, I love you, Dad. And that was the last words I heard her say. She went out, and we didn't realise they were sneaking off to a rave party at the Phoenician Club in the city. They got to this rave party, I don't know, it was 10, 11 o'clock at night. And there was a girl outside who went to Anna's school. She was in the same class as Alice, who was 2 years ahead of Anna. And she was distributing ecstasy tablets there at $60 a pill. Now, Anna didn't have any money because we didn't have any money. So we didn't sort of hand money out like that. But this girl gave it to her on tick, said, you can pay me later. So Anna took this tablet and she went into the rave party in this club, which I don't know how she got into because she's only 15. She only looked 15. She wasn't overdressed. She had just jeans and a T-shirt on. But she got in there, and after an hour or two dancing, she got violently ill. And she collapsed on the bathroom floor in there and was vomiting very badly. And finally, there was a woman came in there and said to one of her friends, look, don't worry about it. What's she taking? She said, oh, she took E. And this woman said, oh, I use that sometimes, and it does that to me as well. Just take her home, give her some orange juice and put her to bed. She said, I'm a nurse. I know about this stuff. So the kids took her home, put her into bed, and she didn't get any better. She just got worse. And she got out of bed at one stage, didn't know, completely disorientated, had no idea where she was. And she's hit the bedroom door with her head because it was shut. And when we got to see her the next day, her head had a great big bruise and bump on it, but that was from where she hit herself. We had no idea this was going on because we went to bed after everybody had left, and Angela couldn't settle. She just knew something was wrong. She just couldn't settle all night. And about 10 o'clock in the morning, the neighbour from across the road came rushing across and said, look, Anna's not well, you better come. So Angie took off out the front door, and I had to try and find my car keys because I felt if Anna wasn't well, we'd have to get her to a doctor or something. So I searched around, and finally I followed Angie to this house, and she started getting Anna down the staircase. And she collapsed on the staircase, and her legs were hanging out through the balustrades there, and I was worried she might hurt herself. So I was holding on to her. They had rung an ambulance, and answered on the phone again, ringing again, and I could hear it in the background coming, and I'm wishing it would get there quicker and quicker. She stopped breathing in my arms, and I was shaking her, saying, please don't die, please don't die. Anyway, the ambulance people got there and got her down the bottom of the stairs. They tried everything to revive her, but it wouldn't happen. Things weren't happening. They couldn't work out what was going on. They gave her Narcan just in case she'd used heroin, which Narcan negotiates what heroin does. It sort of fixes it. Anyway, they finally put her in the ambulance, said to us on life support, and said to us, look, we're going to Royal North Shore Hospital. Don't rush. We don't want another accident. So just come across nice and steady. So we went home and got the car, and we got our other daughter, Alice, who was 2 years older than Anna. She was 17, Anna was 15. And we had a girl called Julie staying with us. She was from Quebec in Canada. She was an exchange student, so she was staying with us, and she was like part of our family by this time. She'd been with us for a month or two. And off we went to Royal North Shore Hospital. Well, we got there, and the receptionist put us in this little tiny room, just the four of us. And Angela, my wife, dobbed at the death room, because we just sat there waiting to see what was going on. And finally, after about an hour, the young doctor came in. He was a lovely man. Came in, he was in tears. He said, "I don't think we can save Anna. I don't think we can save Anna." And that really broke us all up. We all went outside and we were crying and sobbing and carrying on. And they took her up to intensive care and kept her on life support. So all we could do was go up there, and the kids she was with that night wouldn't tell us what happened, because Angie kept yelling at them saying, "What have you done to her? She was fine when she left home last night. What's she taken? What's happened?" They wouldn't say. So finally, someone rang the hospital and said, "Look, she took ecstasy." "What's that?" We had no idea what ecstasy was. So we were able to tell the hospital what she'd taken. We were sitting up there in intensive care. We were completely isolated from the outside world because no one can get in to see us. And we were just there sort of praying that Anna would come around, because it was, they said, "Look, her brain's really swollen." They just couldn't work it out. So anyway, it got to about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and I thought, I've got to take Alice and Julie home. Angie wouldn't leave Anna. She just stayed with them. My wife stayed with her. I have never, ever experienced. A mother's love is so strong, they just want to be with their kids if there's something wrong. And Angie just stayed with her the whole night. She was just wonderful. She bathed her, she cleaned her teeth, she brushed her hair. She couldn't feed her, obviously, because she's on life support. Well, we got home to our house in Davidson on the northern beaches of Sydney, and we lived in a tiny cul-de-sac. And as we got to the front door, I could hear my phone ringing. Now, I do private investigation work, so I had a silent phone number. So I wasn't worried. I thought it'd be some of our friends. But when I answered the phone, this was the start of my drug education, because there was a lady on the phone in tears. She was from Bathurst in New South Wales. And she started telling me about her boy who was 15 years old, and him and his mates had been down the local park sniffing petrol. Her son got sick. The other lads went off to the shop to get some soft drink. When they came back, he was dead. And this woman was just heartbroken. I couldn't calm her down. I just didn't know what to do. So finally, she did hang up, and we did get a bit of sleep. I went back to the hospital next morning with the girls and myself, and Angela was still there with Anna, sponging her down and bathing her, and she hadn't done any movement at all. So later on the Monday, they switched the life support off just briefly, and she stopped breathing, so she was dead, and that was just the way it was. And they had to switch it back on again. So we had another day of waiting and praying, and nothing happened, and off we went home again in the evening, the girls and myself, back again the next morning. And much later in the morning, they said, "We're taking Anna away for a scan now." So they took her away, and she was gone for it seemed like hours. But anyway, they finally brought her back. And this doctor there, Dr. Heather Lowe, said, "Look, I need you to come into my office, all of you. And I got some counsellors here, so we knew things weren't right." So we got into Dr. Heather Lowe's office, and she said, "Look, Anna's brain dead." She said, "There's just no brain activity whatsoever. We've got to switch the life support off." So that wasn't funny. My women, and I think women are far stronger than men when it comes to this sort of thing, because both Alice and Angela said, "Look, Anna would like to donate her organs." this threw the hospital into even further turmoil because they had to get some more counsellors to find that that's really what we wanted. But in our household, we used to sit out every night and have dinner and talk about what went on during the day. And it wasn't long before this that Alice came home and said, look, I got my L's today, and I ticked the box to say I want to donate my organs if anything happens. And Anna, being the giver, which she was a real giver, said, if ever anything happened to me, I want to do the same thing. So they finally decided that's going to be fine, her organs will be all right. So we still didn't know really what this ecstasy had done to her body and what was going on and whether it damaged these organs or not. But it turned out that they took her away about, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night, and we all went home again. And they said, you've got to come back in the morning after we've harvested the organs. It might be 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. You'll have to come back and go to the mortuary and say your final farewells. So we went home and tried to get a little bit of sleep. And it was about 2 o'clock and they rang and they said, look, you can come back now. So we did. We went back to Royal North Shore and went into the mortuary and gave Anna a final kiss goodbye and went home again. Well, about 6:30 in the morning, my phone rang again. It's my brother, Colin. And Colin said, Tony, have you seen the photograph? It's on Anna. It's on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. And I said, Colin, we haven't been home very long. He didn't know what was going on. No one had any idea. And I said, we were in the hospital. We were protected from the outside world. So that was fine. So I walked out their front door and I said, well, it's a little cul-de-sac. And the front lawn's full of reporters and these vans with these TV aerials on top. And it was like, I was shocked. I had no idea. I was hurting. I was in lots of pain. And all I wanted to do was go to the news agent and get a paper and see what Colin was talking about. So I said to the reporters, look, just give us an hour to have a cup of tea and let me get this paper and I'll talk to you. We'll talk to you then. So went to the shop and got the paper and came back home and they were wonderful. They just let us alone. And after an hour, we'd had a bit of a wash and cleaned our teeth and I said, right, okay, what do you want? So they filed in quite a lot of these reporters and I still had Anna's photographs on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, they asked lots of questions about what happened to Anna and we couldn't answer most of them because we didn't really know. We were going to have to wait for the coroner's report to find out what it was all about. So we told them what we could, said we can't tell you anymore, that's all we know. And off they went and we sort of spent the day together and life went on. It was hard, it was really difficult. And then a few days later, a young reporter from Daily Telegraph called Lucinda Duckett came to our house. And it turns out Lucinda Duckett had found out where the kids went to school. And from there, she found out where the school photographs were up at Castle Hill. So she went up to the photographers up there and said she was Angela Wood and could she buy the negative for Anna's school photograph? And she did. So she had to give it back to us. That's why she had to tell us what she'd done. How the hell she got away with it? Because she didn't look old enough to have a 15-year-old daughter. Now, some people say that's awful, that's terrible what she did, but we'll never know how many lives she saved because she did it, because that front page newspaper report, we had people like Jenny Orchard from HarperCollins send Angie a letter saying, I think there's a book in this. So Anna's photograph on that paper just went so far with this. We had Jenny Orchard come to our house with Bronwyn Donaghy. Now, as they're driving to our house, Bronwyn's saying to Jenny, I don't know why I'm doing this. This is ridiculous. I can't believe that people let their daughter go out and do this sort of stuff. Bronwyn was a funny lady. She really was. She wasn't really tall. She was just funny. And she didn't mince words. She just said it as it was. She was a great author, great writer, a great verbalist. Anyway, she got to our house and she walks in. She looked at our dining room table, there's a big bowl of fruit on there. Then she looked at the fridge. We got magnets on there with our kids' photographs, with kids' drawings and all. She's gone, this house is just like mine. This looks like my place. Also, she had a 15-year-old daughter called Anna. So she decided that she needed to do this book, and my goodness, she went away and she came and interviewed all Anna's friends. She interviewed us as a family time and time again. And finally, I don't know how long it took, but they finally published Anna's story. And that was a bestseller for a long time. And it went into every school library. There was a resource to talk to kids about drugs. We still haven't really known what ecstasy was. We knew it was a drug. It was a mind-altering drug. There's no doubt about that. But it took quite a lot longer before the coroner came back, because they had to send tissue of Anna over to see Professor John Henry over in the UK, because the UK had had deaths from ecstasy before, but this is like one of the first ones in Australia. So anyway, we went down the coroner's office in Glebe to get the final report eventually. There were all reporters outside waiting for this report. And we just went inside there. He read this report. And I'd been contacted by a fellow called Paul Dillon. He was like a drug educator. And he said, can you send me that report as soon as you get it so I can have a look at it? So I asked the coroner, can I use your fax machine? So I faxed this report to Paul Dillon. Silliest thing I ever did, because that gave him a warning of what was going on. And he was able to prepare himself to defend drug use, which is something I couldn't understand. Now, the hardest thing was organising Anna's funeral before all of this, after her death, but we did it, and that was really, really difficult. We went to White Lady's funeral because we thought, well, they're going to be the best, and they really were, because Anna was only a young girl. They'd be good with her, and they absolutely were amazing. But we organised for a closed casket, which we thought, well, we'd do. But then her friends used to come in our house and just go and sit in the bedroom and talk for hours. When they found out that we'd organised this closed casket, they're all, we want to see Anna, we want to say goodbye. So we had to find some more counsellors to find out whether we should do that or not, because we had no idea. So we did. We got some more counselling, and the counsellors look, it's probably best the kids do say goodbye, because it's their final farewells. There'll be closure for them. So we had to ring White Lady Funeral, so look, come here with an open casket now. So they organised it. They were wonderful. They absolutely were. They organised it. The day of the funeral came along, and it was like I was driving there in a haze. It was like I was in a dream. It was a nightmare, really. But we got there, and there was about 600 people turned up around this funeral. The kids all filed past the casket. And once that was over, there's no closure. Still the same. He didn't feel any better. So we went on and we got on with our life. And I had to go back to work. We weren't rich. We didn't have a lot of money. So I had to go back to work to keep things turning over and paying the bills and all that sort of stuff. And she went back to work. But she was asked by one of the local schools if she'd go and do a school talk and talk to the girls there about, it was a Catholic school, about what happened to Anna, and as a warning to these kids. So she did. She got a day off work and she went and talked to this school, and she's very successful. Angela was great with girls and kids, girls or boys. She was wonderful. She had this way of communicating, and they just loved it. So she did. And well, it started off a whole new thing for Ange, because once she done one school, another school found out, and it just went on until more and more schools were contacting and asking if she'd do these talks. Well, she used to take a day off work and take it off her holiday pay. which is what you do. I mean, you just want to go out and help as many people as you can and tell your story and get it out there and try to discourage other kids from going down the drug path. So she did. And finally, after a long time, she was at a school out in Parramatta, a girls' school out there. And she was there all day with the girls, and I went at night time. I didn't do any talking. I kept breaking up. I was just awful. I just couldn't talk. My eyes just kept leaking. That was it. I couldn't do anything about it. So she used to do all this all by herself. I was the chauffeur. I drive her there and pick her up. So I went out there anyway just to be with her. And a lady came up to me and said, look, she said, what does Angela do? I said, well, she works for Domini Education Supplies in Brookvale, and she takes a day off of holidays to do these drug talks. She said, my daughter came over from school today and she's never shut up since she heard Angela talk today. She said, I'm quite a successful businesswoman. If I was to give Ange the same wage as she's getting now, would she do it full time? Well, Ange, when she asked Ange, she just jumped at it and said, yeah, I'll do it. So she did. And she travelled all over Australia. And this lady never asked for any reports, nothing. She got a wage every week and that was it. So Ange travelled everywhere, talking to schools everywhere. She had to get Jenny Orchard, who'd left HarperCollins by this time, to do her bookings for her because she didn't have time to do bookings and everything else. So at no stage did she have to charge for doing drug talks anywhere. I mean, I saw her, I used to pick her up at the airport sometimes, and I saw her when she came back from Tasmania. 10 days she's in Tasmania, did 36 talks, night times, day times, a lot. She was exhausted, absolutely exhausted, but she wouldn't stop. She kept going. And I was so proud of her. And I was so proud of Alice as well, my other daughter, 17 years old, and she was able to get out and talk to schools as well and put her theories across. And Alice could be quite tricky. She'd get up there and tell it as it was. She didn't mess around either. That was amazing. It really was that early part of our life after Anna's death. It went on and for a long, long time. Look, Anna died late October. Now, on the 3rd of November, we got this letter in from Dr. Rodak from St Vincent's Hospital, trying to talk us into going down this path of harm reduction. We couldn't understand where he's coming from. I mean, it's just, that can reduce the harms of drugs. I just killed my daughter. And he didn't then have enough manners to mention a name in this letter. How can you let someone do this? I mean, my daughter wasn't an object, she was a person. She was a good person, she was a wonderful person. And yet this man thinks he can just write a letter to us and ask us for stuff that we just don't believe in. And we were hurting so much. It was just days after a funeral. And this man is doing that. What's wrong with these people? We've got Paul Dillon out there telling kids that they can use drugs safely. Paul Dillon, a girl telephoned us one time and said, look, this Paul Dillon's done a talk at our school today. And someone asked him, what about Anna Wood? He said, Anna Wood didn't die from drugs, she died from order. The guy's a moron. Both of them are. I can't understand where this is coming from, but we've got to do something about it. We've got to change the attitude to drugs. We've got to change the attitude to kids. Our kids are really smart. I've been here this week. I decided last Monday that I was going to clear out a 2-cabinet filing cabinet upstairs. There's 2 drawers. They're full of letters from kids. They're overflowing. So I started on Monday, and I found letters from Angela, who wrote. She's a beautiful writer, my Ange. Wrote these letters. Kids wrote to her. Their letters were just heartbreaking. One little girl, she was from Western Australia. She talked about how her friends use drugs, and she talked for 2 pages about this and everything else. But her last line was the best one of all. What you've got to remember is, it's the drugs that are bad. It's not my friends that are bad. And I just thought, well, here's a 14-year-old who's smarter than Dr. Wodak. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And, you know, if we give kids the right ammunition, they'll change this themselves. The kids where Anna and Alice went to school at Forest High, they were so angry after Anna died that they lined up all the drug users up there and said, and there's a lot of them, you're not using drugs in our school anymore. If you want to use drugs, go somewhere else. And they told them, we just don't want it in our school. If we give kids the right information, they'll do the job themselves. Our politicians aren't doing it. Our doctors aren't doing it, because our friend of ours had this made. It's a badge with Anna's face on. Between her death and the funeral, our friend had that made. So we're handing those out at Anna's funeral. We sort of got asked to go and have a meeting with the AMA, the Australian Medical Association. They were talking about starting off a fundraising thing to warn kids about drugs. But then we went back for another meeting. We were told in no uncertain terms, you can't hold that, you can't hand those badges out. Why? Because you can't talk about no use, you've got to talk about safe use. Sorry, that didn't make sense. It really didn't make sense. There's another night, we were asked to go on to, I think it was Channel 9. Anyway, we got there and we're in the green room now. We didn't know who to talk to, because we seemed to be the only two who were anti-drug. Everyone else wanted to liberalise the drug laws. Let's talk about harm reduction and give kids more drugs and tell them how to use them safely. Didn't make any sense, not at all. Anyway, we're sort of wandering around this place lost with the Wodaks and Dylans and everyone else there. And there was this lovely man came up, well dressed, very dapper, beautifully spoken, a fellow called John Maloof. Anyway, John made a lot of sense. He was debating these people about their drug attitude and everything else. He was really, really good. John lived in a beautiful house down at Jamboree, which is down the south coast and inland from Kiama. And he invited us to go down for the weekend. So Ange and I went down for a weekend. It wasn't a weekend of a holiday, because John had so much drug information there that Dorothy's wife did all the cooking. That was great. And we just spent all this time being indoctrinated with John telling us about the drug situation worldwide. And it just didn't make sense to people like Dr. Wodak. We later found in 1992, he went over to Washington to a Drug Policy Foundation conference over there, funded by George Soros. This Soros bloke seems he was a multi-millionaire or billionaire, and he wants this open society, which I don't understand what open society is, but what does that mean? Yes, use drugs or whatever you want, anywhere, anytime you want. Doesn't make sense. It's wrong. It's definitely wrong. We can't do it. So John put us through this, all this information, this weekend of information. Then he gave us some tapes with some of the Australian guys overseas at these conferences and the way they talked about things. And there was one there, I'll have to read this. There was Wodak and Bill Stronach was the other one from the Australian Drug Foundation. The Stronach talks on this tape about how he says, we employ journalists not to churn out press releases, but act as the subversives. He says, we get out there, if someone comes up with an idea that drugs are dangerous, he said, we get there, and he just gets his hands on it, and we turn it around till we get it the way we want it. Hey? Why don't we want to save our children? Why don't we want to save the world? I got no idea what this is all about. We've got to do something about this because it's all wrong. Wodak, Mugford, they've all got titles. I mean, I'm only a dad. I don't have any titles. I'm a dad who lost a kid, and I got angry for a long time. Later on, we saw in the local paper that there was a guy doing a talk on marijuana at the Mossman RSL. So we took off and went there that night, and we met a lovely man called John Anderson. John was treating kids for their marijuana psychosis. There's a neuroscientist, and he was studying Alzheimer's disease and things like that. And he found that marijuana use is a lot like Alzheimer's. You start using that stuff, it knocks out your short-term memory. So his thing was he had a quit marijuana program going on with his surgery up near Westmead Children's Hospital, and he used to hold this meeting once a week with people who were hooked on cannabis and tried to get them off. John found that cannabis reduces an enzyme in the liver that breaks down antidepressants. So what happens is people using marijuana get depressed. They put them on antidepressants, don't they? But if it's not getting broken down by this enzyme in the liver, what happens? They die, build up with antidepressants. So he was going around doctors lecturing them on very low doses of antidepressants because this can happen. Unfortunately, John got a brain tumour and died, so that's not happening. And all these other people didn't like what John was doing. They used to bombard him with pages and pages and pages of questions, which I said, why do you answer this? I got to answer it. He said, that's what I got to do. So it used to take up all his time, so he couldn't be out there treating kids with marijuana psychosis. He couldn't, they were just doing this so he couldn't do his job. Yeah, this is stunning what's going on in our country and our world. We've got to somehow change things and make a place safer for our kids. Give our kids the ammunition they need to go out and look after themselves. Let them change the world. Give them the tools to do it, and they will change the world because our kids are real special, all of them. I got a phone call from a young Year 12 girl at a place called Burren, which is down near the Victorian border. She said, will you come down and talk to the kids in my school? I said, yeah, okay. So I said to Ange, can we go together? So she took some time off what she was doing, and we drove down to Burren. Another town near them called the Delinquent family were going, so they contacted us well, said, can you do some of the schools in the area? Okay, we'll do that as well. We got there to Burren and got to our motel, and this young Year 12 girl came. She was lovely. I said, well, why have you done this? She said, well, look, we're only 2.5 hours from Melbourne, she said, and our local drug dealer, he's a bit of a ratbag, and I'm really frightened that he's going to get upset the drug dealers from Melbourne, and they're going to give him some bad drugs, and they're going to kill my friends. She said, I don't want that. So we did our drug talks at Burren and drove to Delinquent, and we stayed at a nice place there, which was right near the river, and it was like a chalet, so we stayed in there for the night. The next morning, the lady from the house came to take us to, she was from the St. Vincent de Paul, to take us to the first school. But she said, look, can you do something else for us? What? She said, well, we've got this school with Year 6 kids, and we'd like you to talk to them before you go to the other schools at 8:30 this morning. These kids are 6 and 7 years old. I had no chance. But we got there, and these little kids are sitting on the library floor, and Angela got talking to them. She was lovely. I mean, I just loved it. And she talked about drugs. You can't lay it on to them too hard. You just got to take it easy. And that was great. So anyway, we did them, and off we went to the first school, and we did the 5 schools we had to do in that. And in the evening, we're having dinner, and we found out the reason they want us to go to that little school in the morning is because one of those 6-year-olds was on the school bus going home. One of the public school boys was trying to get in and take an ecstasy pill. 6 years old, he's trying to get in. thank goodness the police got involved. That was really important that the police got involved and sorted it out, because you can't do that to little kids. It's not on. Where am I going to go next? Have I talked long enough? Can I keep going?
Tony, if I could make a comment at this point. Look, what you had to say, I think our audience would be totally spellbound, and how you've encapsulated this, not only your suffering, but what you've learned through your suffering, and where the evildoers are, and where the bewildering agendas are, and who are the influencers and who is pulling the levers. And I'm immensely grateful that you've named the people that you have and the role that they are playing in this whole notion of harm reduction. And there's a contagion associated with this mindset that government decision makers have been swept away with the notion of harm minimisation. They think they're doing good. And the way you've put it so clearly is something that I think, well, everybody will take notice, but us in the Drug Advisory Council are immensely grateful for the way you've put it.
Can I just say, I've got to say one more, just one more thing. I've got to talk about.
I want to ask you if you would just amplify your experience when you went to speak with the ABC show Q&A, which most people would be familiar with, because I understand one of those people who was on the Q&A panel, or part of the Q&A panel the night you were there, was a lady who's well known to the Drug Advisory Council, Karen Redpath, who actually, I understand she's in the audience tonight, so I want to salute Karen.
I'm sorry, I carried up. I really want to bring Karen up earlier. Look, Karen Redpath, I don't know how I found out about a book called Chasing After the Wind, but I got in touch with her. She may have got in touch with me, I don't know, but I got a copy. And this book that she's written, because she's been a drug user herself, they've almost destroyed her kidneys, they've almost destroyed her life, and she's written this book that's so descriptive and so brilliant that it should be in every school in Australia, it should be in every school in the world. But I got 2/3 of the way through the book. I had to put it down. I couldn't stop crying. She brought back this feeling of sitting beside the bed in intensive care without her on life support. And I put it down for a week or so, and then I had to go back and finish it off. But Karen was invited to go to this Q&A thing, and I went along just as a bit of support. And that Tony Jones, he didn't really want to hear from Karen. He treated her very badly. And I did get to say a few words, but then he wouldn't look at me again. There was a guy behind me somewhere who was an ex-drug user. He wanted to talk to him. He didn't want to talk to me. He didn't want to talk to Karen, who was so smart and so intelligent. She's got to be, honestly, Jan, we've got to get someone to fund her, to put her in front of 600 kids talking about her experiences, and make a film of it, make it a video, make it a DVD, so we can send it out to every school in Australia, and the kids can sit in their classroom or the library and watch what Karen's got to say, because she is absolutely super. She's very special.
Yes, we realise that, and we love dealing with Karen, and it's very moving. Do you feel that she got the opportunity to talk about herself in an appropriate way, or was that the Q&A panel as managed, as many of us observe, from just skewing things to one point of view?
Well, it was all skewed to one side. It wasn't anybody who didn't really want to have drugs in our society. He didn't want to know. Look, I bailed him up after the program and just told him how disappointed I was. He said, I didn't think you wanted to talk to me. I said, you didn't look at me. I was trying to wait for you. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't look at me. And he's gone now, I think. I don't see him there anymore, so maybe he's moved on. I don't know. But Yeah, look, Karen's great. I've got more stuff here I was going to talk about, but I think we can leave it for another night if you want.
Well, I think it's shaping up a little bit like that. Now, one of the things we asked people to do, Tony, was to actually send some questions in, and we gave people the opportunity to text in questions. And so we've got one from Gabrielle in Queensland, and it goes like this. Tony, you expressed in earlier correspondence that it may be a more successful strategy to approach members of Parliament with a brief on what illicit drug use costs the Australian taxpayer, be it increased homelessness, mental illness, domestic violence, death on the roads, violence in emergency wards, increases in crime. Where do you think we should start? That's some question.
Oh, look, I've written about this because I just can't work out. My whole life is thinking about drugs. I'm sorry, but it just is. I mean, since 1995, it's like, how can we change things? And I think about it constantly. And I think that the cost of drug use is costing us a fortune. With all those things that Gabriel just said, somehow we've got to get our politicians to take this on board. Some of them who can make a decision and make something happen that we can't. Let's get people out there and stop them using drugs. There's going to be a lot of parents who will be a lot better off. I mean, I was at a function not too long ago, and a lady came up to me and she said, Tony, she said, I'm going to tell you, I haven't seen my boy for 15 years. She said, 15 years ago, I couldn't take the beatings anymore, so I took an AVO out against him. I don't know if he's dead or alive. She said, and she's in tears, this lady. She's well-dressed, lovely person. I don't. We've had people come up to us and say, you know, you're lucky. Angie and I just felt really hurt this time. And then we worked out what they were saying is, you know where Anna is. Our kids are so badly damaged by drugs, they don't know what day it is. We can't do anything with them. So you're lucky. At least you know where Anna is.
That's quite an extraordinary thing for you to have to take on board, Tony. I have a question here from Terry. What do you say to people, probably young people in particular, who say it is tragic if a person dies or becomes addicted to drugs, but not all do? Is it just a matter of deciding what risk to take?
Yeah, look, that's a good question too. Look, the thing with drugs, they're idiosyncratic, and I've seen it with ecstasy. The young people who die from it, it's just a nasty drug. It should. Shane Varco, who you know, he says we should call it a death drug because thousands of people take it some weekends and they're fine, but all of a sudden one of them will it'll take them and kill them. Their brain will swell. Anna's brain was so big it couldn't fit in the skull anymore. It was pushing down the back of the spinal column. This is what happens with these things. And marijuana, some people use marijuana, just get dopey. Others can become violent. You look at some of the really bizarre murders that go on in our country. People who cut their fathers' heads off. I was with Major Brian Waters not so long ago, and he talked about, he was doing a drug talk one night with a bunch of young people, and he said, I'll just tell them, we won't go into marijuana. We all know it's a soft drug. And they went on talking about other things. At the end of the night, one of those young men came up to him and said, look, Brian, you've got to talk about marijuana. He said, I killed my mother with a hammer. I just got out of prison. I didn't know I did it. We've got to start telling the truth about these things and not sort of fluff over them. They're dangerous. They're idiosyncratic. Some people can use them fine and others can't. I don't know what goes on up here, but some people. I mean, I took Alice, our 17-year-old, 18-year-old, back in those days. And she was talking to a school one day, and she talked about how she wouldn't take the drugs because she had the same DNA as her sister. She could die. Oh, she's right, you know.
That is so true, Tony. Thank you for that very well-rounded response. I'm very conscious that this might be putting you under a lot of stress, so I thank you very much. I have another question. I just have to open up this text, excuse me. It's from John here in Melbourne. It says, Tony, thank you for an unforgettable presentation. Why do you think so few of our politicians are prepared to take a strong stand against drugs?
They are not against drugs, or I don't think they take a strong stance. That's the problem.
They are not prepared to take a strong stand.
Look, I don't know. I got no idea, and it's it gives you a message in your head that I'm thinking about. Why can't you do something about it? I mean, we had one Prime Minister one time, his daughter was a heroin addict. You would have thought he'd done something about it, but he didn't. Why? They've all got friends, they've all got relatives, they can see what's going on in the world. I don't know, we've got to find someone eventually who'll come up and say, drugs are doing our kids' heads in. We've got to stop them and get them back into a situation where they're not going to use drugs anymore, and we'll think this up. Be a bit like Sweden. Sweden went down the same path as Amsterdam. They liberalised all the drug laws. It took them a year to work out they'd wrong, and they went back to a restricted drug policy because it wasn't working.
I think that's a very salutary lesson. Look, I have a question. Actually, you mentioned Shane Varco before. He's put a question through to us.
Okay.
Hello to Shane. And while I'm saying hello, I think I'll say hello to Jo Baxter from the Drug Free Australia from her headquarters in Adelaide. It's great to have you with us, Jo. And I also want to make mention of the fact that one of our patrons, former member of the Legislative Council in the Parliament of Victoria, Inga Powlich, is with us tonight as well. So it's good to have one of our patrons here. Now, he has said, what can you point to as the top 2 impacts of Angela and your work when you were touring? What brought about change in the environments you went into?
Oh, well, I think just standing up there as a mum and dad, it just happens. I mean, if you're standing in front of a bunch of particularly young people and talk about your experience, it comes across, and some of the letters just say, we didn't use drugs because we didn't want to see our mum and dad in your situation. We don't want to see your mum and dad hurting like you and Angie do. And that's right. If you get up there and tell kids that how you're going to feel if anything happens to them, whether it's drugs, driving cars in a mad way, they don't want to hurt their mums and dads. So we'll just keep pointing to mums and dads, and I think if we can keep that up, we'll keep it up. Thanks, Shane.
Here's another question from Phyllis here in Melbourne. What do you think is the responsibility of the police and the organisers for drugs being pushed at entertainment events, e.g. the screening to ensure no drugs being carried into the venue requiring proof of age? It's the whole debate, and it's central to what your argument was in the book, Tony.
Yeah.
The notion that pill testing would not have saved your Anna, because they would have tested the ecstasy pill and found that it was pure MDMA.
Yep.
And therefore they would have said that's a pure tablet. You can go and take it. So that's what the pill testing would generate, a reaction like that.
Well, what they do overseas, of course, is they take a scraping, test the pill. They can tell the person whether it's contaminated or not. Then it's up to them whether they take it or not. Look, Angie travelled and I travelled all over France talking to kids. We've been all over England talking to kids. The thing is, they're still dying over there because they're testing the pills, they're taking the pills, and they're still dying. This drug is a death drug. We've got to stop kids using it, not seeing it as contaminated. That's all there is to it. It's just a death drug. You can't take it safely. Hundreds can every weekend, but then it just grabs one or two. And you know what? COVID's been wonderful. Why has COVID been wonderful? Because I haven't had a phone call at 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning wanting to comment because someone's died overnight at a music festival.
There's another question here from Helen here in Melbourne. Tony, do you have any advice for parents as to how they can minimise the risk their children will take drugs?
Well, again, the risk's always going to be there. If kids are going to use drugs, there's always going to be a risk. Doesn't matter which one you're going to use, there's a risk to take them and using them. As I said, ecstasy is idiosyncratic. Most of the people I've read about who've taken ecstasy and died, it's been their first time. It's not like they've used it for a long time then died. They've taken the first time and died. The only thing is, and again, we've got to keep pushing this, if they're out with friends and they get ill, get them to a hospital straight away. Get an ambulance. You won't be in trouble. Just get them sorted out. Get them quickly looked after, please.
That's so true. There's no reassurances we can possibly take on board. That happens at this time in our webinars as the text messages starting to come through thick and fast. And you'll be very pleased to know that I've got a text message from Jo Baxter in Adelaide from Drug Free Australia. And she said, "Hi, Tony. Your comment about the kids making the change and education is the key. Thank you for agreeing to be our ambassador for our new Save Your Brain online education resource for schools."
Yep.
Hip, hip, hooray for that initiative from Drug Free Australia. Jo, brilliant.
Oh,
So the question is, I'm framing the question for you after that intro.
Yes.
She's put to you, how do you think we could promote it widely? Will it be free and interactive for middle schools? Regards, Jo Baxter. Now, have you noticed, Tony, that with this profile that you have and this awesome experience that you lay out so effectively for us, if you know how you have become the font of all wisdom, you're the marketing expert and you're the political strategist and you're the hero on so many fronts. But if you could help Jo there, how do you think we could promote it widely? It will be free and interactive for middle schools. So free and interactive for middle schools. We've got to get that out to the schools, out to save kids' brains.
Jo, you know a clairvoyant? Because we can bring Angie back. She's brilliant. She's absolutely amazing. Kids love her. Once she went to one school, it just exploded. So we didn't have to do any promotion. It just self-promoted itself. She had to get a lady to take her bookings. There were so many of them. And she got invitations to go all over Australia, West Australia, everywhere. We couldn't afford, even though she was getting paid a wage, we couldn't afford the airfares, we couldn't afford the motel bills, but the rest of the stuff was all free. And that's the way we did it. But look, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say, I think somewhere there's got to be some charges come in because we never charged. I'm 78 now. I get a bit of a pension, but there's things I want to do and I can't because I don't have the money anymore. I'm not working like I used to. I used to be good. when I was working. If I wanted some things printed, I just go to the printer and say, knock me out a couple of thousand of those, and I could afford to pay for it. But look, Joe, I think somewhere, and if you do charge, the schools will have you back again. I think some of the times I didn't get invited back because they were too worried that I didn't charge. I went to one school in Marrickville here in Sydney. I don't know how many times I went. I must have gone 10 times there. And it was so good that I could stand up and talk to the kids there. And if I forgot something, the teachers prompted me. I didn't know the answer. The teachers there to prompt me and said, what about this, Tony? And that was really funny there, because things sort of happened to me. And we got to question time the last time I went there. And this boy stood up to ask a question. He was like the school nerd. He was beautifully dressed, beautifully groomed. And he said, Mr. Wood, he said, what does the Catholic Church think about organ donation? Because I talked about Anna's organs being donated. I'm going, I don't know. I didn't know. I'd never been asked that question before. I've been asked, well, that was the weirdest one. And 2 weeks later, I was at a function up in Lismore, up the coast there. And I sat next to the Catholic bishop. I said, hey, listen, what do you think about organ donation? So I got the answer 2 weeks later. I haven't been back to the school again to tell him. He's probably left now anyway. Graduated.
Thank you very much, Tony. I've got a message here from Karen Redpath. Tony, you are amazing. Such an amazing warrior for the young people of this nation, and 3 hearts. So Helen Leach has, I know Helen's from Bendigo, and she said, what a sad but amazing story. Thank you, Tony. So you're moving people tremendously, as we knew you would. Now, it's probably time that we start to focus towards the end of our session with our audience tonight, Tony. I just want to say a couple of things. I need to announce to our audience and to the members of the Drug Advisory Council, our executive and our members and our supporters and our patrons, that we're very pleased that you have accepted the Drug Advisory Council of Australia's invitation to become a patron. And I can see people clapping and nodding all over this country as I make that announcement, because they'd say, how fitting, how appropriate. You couldn't do better than have a man like Tony Wood acting as a patron, and to help the Drug Advisory Council get its message out and to push back against the dark forces. What I'd like to say to our audience is that we've heard about Tony and his beautiful wife, Angela, who passed away a few years ago. So Tony, with his beautiful daughter Alice, and the grandchildren, the 2 boys. It's an incredible odyssey. It's a very stressful and physical and demanding exercise. All of the people listening tonight, we have to put our heads together, and we have to find a way to level out what I call an asymmetrical war. Tony mentioned the actions of the head of the Open Society Foundation, George Soros. What we do know is that George Soros, who's a great currency manipulator, has a lot of money at his disposal. And in October 2018, he unleashed $18 billion for the workings of his Open Society Foundation. And a lot of that, the effect of that we see directly and indirectly in Australia, but very directly, funds the push for the legalisation of illicit drugs. And so it goes on. And so the people who are pushing back on this are so under-resourced as a collective, as a mindset, as Australian caring parents, caring citizens, people wanting a good future for the current generation and future generations, a healthy, intact, whole society, not affected by the scourge of drugs. We actually need to find a way to level out the playing field. It is an asymmetrical war. We don't have $18 billion to unleash to promote our side of the story. And as you can see, there are agents who somehow or another have been convinced that all of the questionable and thoroughly discredited approaches to the drugs question in our society and around the world are failing because people have taken their eye off the ball. They are not putting the money in terms of for education for the people who are affected. They're not finding proper ways for them to be rehabilitated in an affordable manner. And importantly, there's police forces all over the place turning a blind eye. So there's almost an absence of enforcement in so many instances. It's a wake-up call for the nation. It's a wake-up call for this generation, for parents, for young people and grandparents, for decision makers, for anybody who's been able to, privileged to take in what Tony, the average Australian dad, has carried so much of a weight on his shoulders. Let us all individually and collectively help take that weight off Tony Wood's shoulders. Let's put some air under his wings and make his life easier. Let's put our shoulder to the wheel. And one of the ways that you can do that is that I must say that as you book, some people have made some donations. There's an opportunity for you to donate by going to daca.org.au/donate, and you'll see that on the screen when we close. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for supporting the Drug Advisory Council tonight. Thank you very much to Tony Wood to putting in this very, very special effort to be with us tonight, to give us this heartrending account of the loss of his daughter and the 26 years, almost 25 and a half years since her passing. All of the brilliant work that you and Angela have done, not only in this country, in the UK and in France as well. It's an incredible odyssey. And what I would like to do is to encourage each of you to go to your bookstore and demand that they get a copy of this book in. And in time to come, I'm going to have a conversation with Tony and the publishers of this book, Anna's Story, HarperCollins, that they do a reprint of this book and a relaunch of this book, because even though Anna's Story started in terms of her passing, started in 1995, everything that's in it, her experiences, the experiences of her family, the experiences of her friend, all of the things upon reflection, it resonates today. There are young people who you know might be well saved. If you can't get a copy of this book, let us know and let's push to see this book reprinted, relaunched. It needs to resonate through the families, through our society, and literally through the ages. Tony, thank you very much for being part of the Drug Advisory Council's webinar tonight.
One more thing.
Yes.
Don't leave home without telling your kids you love them.
Oh, thank you very much. How telling, how beautiful, and what a wonderful way to close things tonight, Tony. May you be blessed and you have peace of mind tonight, and that you sleep soundly and that you take care of your general health, and we'll be speaking to you in coming days. Thank you for accepting to be a patron of the Drug Advisory Council and giving so much of yourself to our audience tonight. Good night to everybody, and God bless you all, and thank you.
Thanks, Jan.